Hello, and welcome back to the channel, Coral Jacks. In this video, we'll be exploring the heavily disturbed monumental complex at Glandy Cross, revisiting its better preserved neighbour, Gors Fawr, and heading up the nearby Preseli slopes to Bedd Arthur and the Bluestone outcrops of Carn Menin, Carn Goedog, and more, to be greeted by a surprise introduction from a bold young mountain pony, clearly interested in saying hello to Zeb. Glandy Cross is a tiny village just on the Carmarthenshire and Pembrokeshire border. If you've driven through, you'll probably have noticed the Petrol Station and perhaps the pub, which has long since closed.
Busy day for the tractors.
But you may have missed Meini Gwyr and its neighbouring stones and earthworks. This unassuming site has been the subject of investigation and excavation for the past 3 centuries, lying at the centre of West Wales' most important complex of prehistoric ritual and funerary monuments, and on the ridgeway linking the western end of the Preseli mountains to the Eastern Cleddau river and Milford Haven. The complex is preserved on OS maps, but much overlooked due to its ruinous state, with only 2 pairs of standing stones remaining. The first pair are easily accessible from the road, with a sign depicting how the embanked stone circle may have looked when all 17 or more stones were still present and erect. The rough shape of the circular bank is still clearly visible, and walking across from the surviving stones, you can make out the flattened entranceway, although this isn't as clear on the camera. A field away, and just over the hedge, are another pair, also thought to be the remains of a larger structure, but there's no designated footpath or right-of-way, and the tractors were buzzing about busily. So, after a casual wave from one of the drivers, we happily continued with our short drone flight. Known as Alor, it has been suggested that a third standing stone once created a cove, or that it may have even held a capstone. But enough with our introductions, let's dive into what the Antiquarians had to say. In the 17th century, Edward Cloyd recorded that there were still 15 stones in the circle, and that some had already been carried off. Printed in Edmund Gibson's edition of Camden's Britannia in 1695, Edward Cloyd's account ran as follows. Bwath Arthur, or Meini Gwyr, on a mountain near Kilmaen Cloyd, is one of that kind of circular stone monuments which our English historians ascribe to the Danes. The diameter of the circle is about 20 yards. The stones are as rude as may be, and pitched on end at uncertain distances from each other, some at 3 or 4 foot, but others about 2 yards, and are also of several heights, some being about 3 or 4 foot high, and others 5 or 6. There are now standing here 15 of them, but there seem to have been 7 or 8 carried off. The entry into it, for about the space of 3 yards, is guarded on each side with stones much lower and less than those of the circle, and pitched so close as to be contiguous. As for the name Bwath Arthur, it is only a nickname of the vulgar, whose humour it is, though not so much as some have imagined, out of ignorance and credulity, as a kind of rustic diversion, to dedicate many unaccountable monuments to the memory of that hero, calling some stones of several ton weight his quoits, other his tables, chairs, etc. But Meini Gwyr is so old a name that it seems scarce intelligible. Meine is indeed our common word for large stones, but Gwyr, in the present British Welsh, signifies only crooked, which is scarce applicable to these stones, unless we should suppose them to be so denominated, because some of them are at present upright but a little inclining. It may be such as take these circular monuments for Druid temples, may imagine them so called from bowing as having been places of worship. He also mentions that there were 3 standing stones 200 paces away, but we believe that because of a poorly reproduced diagram, this is often misquoted as 100 paces, and even confused as 2 separate entries. But after studying available maps and diagrams, we're fairly confident that he's referring to Alor. And over against this avenue, at the distance of about 200 paces, there stand on end 3 other large rude stones, which I therefore note particularly because there are also 4 or 5 stones erected at such a distance from that circular monument, which they call King's Stone, near Little Rollrich in Oxfordshire. In the following entry, William Stuckley also reported on Meini Gwyr and the pair of stones we now know as Alor. In his report, he labels Alor as a kiswine and suggests it may be a cove like one at Avebury. But a 2012 article by C. Stephen Briggs analyses these antiquarian sources and, among other things, concludes that Stuckley's Neolithic cove is likely a fanciful invention. Furthermore, many of his records are direct copies of older works, and there is little evidence that he actually visited the sites himself. According to Cleddau, excavations in the 1990s revealed an early Bronze Age complex, including a pit circle, quartz cobbling, and wooden screening. Some believe these stones could have been supporting a capstone, with many large stones lying around in the fields as possible candidates. In August 1938, W.F. Grimes was hired to begin excavations at Meini Gwyr because of its proximity to the source of the Stonehenge Bluestones, with hopes that something may be learned from it of the connection of Stonehenge with southwest Wales. The excavations confirmed that the two orthostats we see today, lying around 6.5 metres apart within the south of the bank, are all that remain of some 17 or more stones making up the original circle. Born and brought up in Pembrokeshire, W.F. Grimes had been captivated by the implications of H.H. Thomas's petrographic sourcing of some Stonehenge bluestones to Carn Menin on the Mynydd Preseli in 1921 and 1923. Carn Menin is more recently named Carn Menin. Today, debate about this topic is still raging on, and we're currently in the process of making a video in which we cover all of the theories around Stonehenge and the Preseli bluestones, and attempt to separate the evidence from the rhetoric. There's a lot to cover, and we want to do it justice, so we've put it on pause to avoid completely destroying our upload schedule. This does give you another chance though. If you'd like to share any of your own info or thoughts on the topic, please feel free to leave us a comment down below. Grimes claims that the report of this site was never fully published because the excavation record had been lost when enemy bombings destroyed the Ordnance Survey Office at Southampton during the Second World War, and we can only imagine what other kind of documentation would have been lost as well. Thankfully, some of the notes did survive, as well as some photographs of the excavation. His excavation established how the outer bank of the site was composed of clay and decayed turf scraped up from the surface, with some stones in the body of it. Outside the entrance, Grimes found a pit containing charcoal. There was also a hearth within the bank from which food vessel shards were recovered. As it stands, the monument is best seen as an embanked stone circle, though it seems reasonable to suppose that before being denuded of at least 15 uprights, and probably a good deal of overburden, it may have assumed more the form of a structured mound, comparable in type to early Bronze Age ring cairns. To continue our day of stone bothering, we headed over to Gors Fawr. But these shots are from a previous visit, because today the site was surprisingly busy, with a large group of kids and off-lead dogs enjoying the space. So we left our phones and drone packed away, paid a brief visit to the stones, and left them to it. Seeing as the wind was a bit less extreme than it has been recently, we thought we'd grab the chance to get some aerial shots of the cairns and outcrops on the nearby Preseli hills. Partly in further preparation for our upcoming video on the Preseli Bluestones, but also because we take any excuse for a visit to Bedd Arthur. We passed Carn Sharn and Carn Bicker before doing a flyover of Carn Goedog, Carn Menin and Carn Preseli. Along with Crag Rossavelin, Carn Goedog has featured heavily in Mike Parker Pearson's research into the Stonehenge Bluestones, and he claims to have found considerable evidence that humans quarried these sites for stone used in Neolithic and Bronze Age construction. Although these ideas have received a lot of publicity, they've also been widely criticised, and many believe that there has been substantial interpretive inflation driven by a desire to demonstrate a Stonehenge connection. Critics also say that his team may have dismissed the actions of glacial ice prematurely and without sufficient evidence. Whichever side of the debate you're on, or if you haven't decided yet, please subscribe to our channel to find out more about this topic, get notified of new videos when they're published. Thanks for watching, and we hope to see you next time.